You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed-sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed-sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Summer's here, and you can now get almost anything you need for your sunny days delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get a chicken parmesan delivered. A cabana? That's a no. But a banana? That's a yes. A nice tan? Sorry, nope. But a box fan? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
Welcome into another edition of the James Boyd Podcast. I am, of course, James Boyd, joined by my editor, Jim Ayello. And Jim, we don't have a game to discuss this week, or at least one that has recently passed. We had the bye week. It was nice to get some R&R, as they say. Saw my family for my birthday. That was pretty cool. Even though, Jim, as I texted you, my sister scheduled a dinner during the Thursday night game. Like, I don't work in the NFL, and I was thinking, woman, are you crazy? But it was fun to see the family, get some time off, and obviously hit the road again this week in Denver for what will be a huge, huge game.
Yeah, man, it was nice to it's actually kind of fun that both teams had a bye week this week, both the Denver Broncos and the Indianapolis Colts. And it's not as big a game for the Broncos, obviously, because they're in a great position for the wild card, but this is the Colts season. So we got like a 2-week buildup. And I know you guys talked to Shane Steichen about, like, you know, using the bye week to prepare. And he even said, like, I took some time with the family, but I started digging into Denver right away.
Yeah.
Because, like, this is it, man. Like, I in the story that you published this morning, if they win this game, they have a 61% chance of making the playoffs, which I know sounds wild because they'd still be a game back at Denver. But the Broncos have such a tough schedule going forward, and the Colts have such an easy schedule going forward that our projection model here at the Athletic says, like, the Colts have a really good chance of knotting up those records, and then they would have the tiebreaker. But if they lose this game this weekend, down to 10%. And they're 3 games back at Denver without the tiebreaker, effectively, and it's pretty much over. So it is a massive, massive game. And as I said, getting back to it, it was kind of fun to have the bye week to kind of think about it and build into it.
Absolutely. I think this is one of those games where it could be sort of a defining moment for, say, Anthony Richardson, mainly because as we were going over story ideas this week, and for those behind the scenes, or those listening rather, what goes on behind the scenes with me and Jim is a lot of conversations about, okay, what stories are we thinking, what angles, and we'll usually collaborate or kind of come to a head on one story idea or two. And one of the ones that we landed on that I have to give Jim a lot of credit for was, hey, what about how young Anthony is? And I was like, what do you mean? You know, obviously I know he's young and probably got to get some experience. Whoop-de-doo. But I think it was you actually who pointed out to me that, hey, he started 13 college games at Florida, and he's now started 13 in the NFL. And Sunday in Denver will mark 14. So which will be obviously more games than he started in his college career, which was a fascinating stat or fascinating factoid to me, because it doesn't seem like it's been that long, and it really hasn't, quite honestly. And a lot of unique circumstances kind of led to that. Like, I think Anthony in and of himself is an anomaly with the way he was drafted. And his resume, when he got drafted at number 4, it was kind of unheard of to be that inexperienced and, quite frankly, that inaccurate and still go on the top 5. And then you get to the NFL and everyone's screaming like, you know, hey, this guy needs to play. He needs to play to get some experience. That's all the Colts said, even though I know Chris Ballard, if you all read Jim Trotter's piece in The Athletic recently, kind of reneged on it and kind of went back and said,
Yeah.
hey, I wish we didn't play him. And I'm like, I got to talk to my guy Ballard and kind of pick his brain some more. 'Cause I'm like, this sounds a bit like revisionist history to me. But no, in all seriousness, he also had the injuries that popped up. He had the benching this year for 2 weeks that popped up as well. And all that kind of culminated with him having this still very unique path in the NFL to have only played or started in 13 games. And then the weird part that you pointed out, and I'll let you kind of, reel off some of these unique stats. And these are like what I would call like the ESPN type of stats. And I give Stephen Holder, my buddy, my mentor, a bunch of crap about this all the time when he, pulls out some random stat about this is the Colts' first win on a Sunday afternoon game with a temperature at 46 degrees or below or since whatever. And I'm like, you get this out of my face. But when we use it to our advantage, I love it. So
Yeah.
when you were brainstorming, what'd you come up with and what can you share with our listeners?
Well, it's always interesting. I mean, I think the perspective that you and I were coming at this from was like, let's frame how young he is, and no better time to do it than when they're playing against Bo Nix, right? The quarterback for the Broncos, who's played 7,000 games in college. And I mean, you and I laughed a lot, but like, they're totally different, like collegiate trajectories to the NFL, like completely different. You couldn't have, like, Bo Nix was like a super high recruit, went and played at Auburn, then went and played at Oregon, but started pretty much every game of his career. And then Anthony Richardson sat for 2 years effectively at Florida. Was a pretty highly recruited guy. I think he was like, I think I looked, he was like number 4, number 5 in terms of dual threat quarterbacks in his class. So it wasn't like he was a nobody. I don't think you can be when you're that size and that athletic. But anyway, Anthony Richardson essentially was still in high school, I think a year or two while Bo Nix was his first year in college. And then Anthony Richardson gets to the NFL a whole year ahead of Bo Nix. So when we're evaluating quarterbacks, we're like, well, this is the rookie class, this is the sophomore class. It's not that simple. And we make it simple sometimes. Oh, these guys are, this is his first year, this is his second. As you said, like, this is only third. This is the same for Bo Nix. This is his 14th game. Like, they're in the same timeline right now in terms of their NFL career. And then if you look at their college stats, and I know you kind of teed me up for these, like, so Bo Nix is 24.8 years old. So he's more than 2 full years older than Anthony Richardson. He had 74 career college and NFL starts so far. That's triple where Anthony Richardson had.
Right.
26.
He had, for listeners, he had 61 college starts, was the NCAA record.
Yep. Yeah. And then 13 in the NFL. Yeah. So then in terms of total passes they've thrown, this is the crazy one. One of the crazier ones to me is Bo Nix has thrown 2,370 passes in between college and the NFL. Anthony Richardson isn't even at 800 yet. Again, triple the amount of passes in the college and NFL levels. And then, I don't know, this last two are kind of fun to me. There's the date of the 367th career completion. That happened for Bo Nix on November 28th, 2020. For Anthony Richardson, that happened 2 weeks ago in his last NFL game. That was something. And then, last one is 27th career start, which we just said is 26 for Anthony Richardson, 13 in college, 13 in the NFL. His 27th career start will come this week against the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix's 27th career start between college and the NFL came on September 18th, 2021 at Penn State. Like, it's wild. And I think the purpose of this, and I want you to get into this a little bit, is just to understand and appreciate how young Anthony Richardson is, how much longer he has to go in his development and trajectory. Like, we talked about this too. The draft class coming up with the two, at least according to our draft guru, Dane Brugler, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are the two guys. Like, Anthony Richardson is their age or young. I mean, I think he's 2 days older than Cam Ward. Like, they're pretty much the same age. There's going to be a guy who's a rookie quarterback in the NFL next year who is the same age as Anthony Richardson. So again, it's a perspective I think you have to keep in mind as we evaluate and talk about Anthony Richardson, is just how young he really is.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that he obviously doesn't want to harp on too much, but I did ask him yesterday myself, like, hey man, you played 13 college games, you played 13 NFL games, what feels different? And at first he gave me some cookie cutter QB1 answer that I don't even remember. I was like, that I'm not using because that sounds like a bunch of nothing. And honestly, it's good when those moments happen as a reporter because you're challenged to ask a better question. So I followed up and said, hey, but what do you think has changed the most about your game versus like what have you learned and stuff like that? Because I think he's I think he's very cognizant of the benching, the optics, and not wanting to harp on that too much and how much he's changed and how much he's learned, all these things. Like, I don't think he wants to really delve back into that, especially now that he's weeks removed from that and playing pretty good football as of late.
Yeah.
But I made it specifically, and this is what I wanted from the beginning anyway, was what about your game? Like what tangible things? And I thought what he said was pretty interesting because what Shane Steichen pointed out was like, hey, he's knowing where he wants to go with the football. He's making better decisions with his legs. His pocket presence is getting better. And Jim Bob Cooter was giving him some credit as well as far as his game management, how he sees things. But the AR kind of comes out and says what everyone pretty much thinks when they watch him, at least me, is I don't have to be Superman all the time. That's his biggest takeaway from college to the NFL. I thought that was fascinating and also very enlightening to maybe the maturity we're seeing in his game. Because if you look, Jim, especially in these last 3 games that he's played since the benching, he's been Superman at certain moments, especially on those final drives, those final plays, running guys over for, game-winning scores and touchdowns and 2-point conversions. However, he's also been very good on like the layups. He's been a lot better at the intermediate in the throws that are not so much down the field. And I think that's what's been able to kind of sustain these drives and keep these drives going. So it was interesting to hear his perspective of him basically say, yeah, I have superpowers, but I can't always just rely on them to be great. And I think that is the premise of why he was even benched and why he probably had to focus more and all these different things. It's like you probably need to be dialed in a little bit more on doing the quote unquote regular things. And I've always said this, and me and my dad talked about this all the time when I was playing basketball. Obviously, I was not good enough to be even a college player. I was a below average high school player, to be quite honest with you. I mean, my school wasn't even all that great. So the reason I started was because we weren't that great, quite honestly. But one of the things my dad used to always tell me was, Chris Paul, for example, who just moved into number 2 on the NBA all-time assist list. And I promise this will make sense. I promise. He's not an extraordinary passer, or he's not averaging 10 assists per game in the prime of his career because he's making 10 flashy passes. He's making regular bounce passes and 2-hand chest passes. Then that one flashy pass is the one you remember. And he's like, that is why he's great. He makes the simple stuff look simple, and he does it over and over and over again. And he takes what the defense gives him. And then obviously to kind of marry that to the quarterback position, the reason why Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were so great, especially in the era when they were going basically head to head all the time, was that they knew the other one was going to take the layups. They weren't going to force too many things to try to happen. And I think Anthony is kind of learning that, like, hey, I don't have to, uncork this rocket that I have on my arm when I could just, throw this little, check down to our running back or check down to a wide receiver. And obviously, some of those things kind of change with personnel lineups. Josh Downs being out the last week didn't help, last game didn't help. But again, I think he's kind of learning that. So it's cool to hear his perspective on it. He also said this isn't the biggest game of his life, Jim, but me being a realist, it is. And nothing's wrong with that. I mean, of course, again, he's doesn't have the experience as Bo Nix. Bo Nix played in the Iron Bowl, which obviously is a huge game in the SEC between Auburn and Alabama. He played in the Pac-12 championship at Oregon. And I believe if they had won that game, I think they lost it actually. They would have been in the college football playoff. So he's been in big moments in high pressurized environments. He was a Heisman finalist.
Right.
Whereas Anthony,
crazy,
just being real, he wasn't even all SEC at Florida. He didn't play in very many big games, and dating back to high school, it wasn't like his high school career was all that decorated either. So he's still gaining that experience. I think it's very, very cool to kind of see him go through this process despite being the, I guess, older quarterback of the two when it comes to him, Bo Nix, as far as NFL experience goes, as far as just years in the league. So that was very interesting to see. And he will be tested. I know you talked about this Denver Broncos defense, and I'll let you kind of take it away from here. But what do you think he will face when he goes up against Sean Payton, who we know is a big-time head coach and has had 2 weeks to prepare for this, quarterback that he, noted as being different than anything else he had to prepare for this season?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a test unlike one he's had in a while. I think Vance Joseph's defense is complicated. It's not necessarily something that that Anthony Richardson has seen a lot of, and they're a top 5 defensive DVOA team, which means essentially DVOA being it ranks teams based on it. It adjusts for quality of opponent effectively. So it's not just your points, because if it was, Denver would be even higher. They're only giving up 18 points a game right now. That's tied for second in the NFL, but they're 5th in DVOA, which means they're doing it against bad teams, they're doing it against good teams, they're doing it against everybody. It's going to be real tough Pat Surtain is going to essentially lock down one side of the field because that's what he does. Fortunately for the Colts, they're not really a funnel through one receiver type of offense, so it shouldn't, like, playing against a guy like Pat Surtain shouldn't hurt them quite as much. The problem for the Colts is going to be the kind of relentless amount of pass rushers Denver throws it. They're not a lot of household names, guys like Nick Bonito, but like they're not. They're bendy, they're athletic, they're fast, and they have a lot of them. In fact, I think they traded one at the trade deadline whose name is escaping me at the moment. But they have a lot of really athletic edge rushers that are going to make life really hard on the tackles for the Colts this week. And I will say, we talked about superpowers for Anthony Richardson. It's something we've talked about before. It's one of the things that he really, truly does the best, and one of the best in the NFL is mitigate sacks. He does not take sacks. He does not make negative plays in that way, and that will be a huge help against this Denver defense. So I do think that there are reasons to believe that the Colts can, beat Denver and not get overwhelmed by this Denver defense. Obviously, this offense, like, again, the other side of the ball is probably a little more concerning. Even as good as Denver's defense is, Sean Payton and Bo Nix have kind of gotten things going a little bit recently, and I don't know how much faith to put in Gus Bradley's Colts defense right now. I don't know. I was kind of curious what you were thinking. Again, I do wonder about this bye week. Like, I kind of think advantage Broncos, to be honest with you. I think Sean Payton's done this a lot of times and knows exactly how to take advantage of a bye week and look and pinpoint these little weaknesses that every team has and exploit them. And again, I think Shane Steichen is probably going to be good at that, or is good at that. But we obviously haven't seen Shane Steichen out of the bye week many times, obviously. But we heard from him, and this is something I want you to touch on as you kind of answer this question. But we heard from Shane that he was looking into the Broncos. But I am curious about. It sounded like a little nugget in your story. It sounded like Anthony Richardson spent. He went down to Florida and did some family time, which is great. I mean, I think everybody needs time to pull away. But like he said, he was texting Shane Steichen like the day after about getting ready for this team. So yeah, I mean, I kind of want to hear on your end. What are you thinking of the matchup? And then what? I don't know. Was it encouraging? How did you hear Anthony Richardson's comments about preparing during the bye week? Do you feel like it's something you would have heard maybe pre-benching? Is this something you think you would have done or not? I know that's kind of hard to, you have to kind of guess, but I am curious what your thoughts on that were.
I think that's actually a good question, mainly because I'll put it like this. I don't know if Anthony would have been aware enough to just say it out loud. Like, he says all the right things now, which is kind of like a good thing and a bad thing as a reporter, because I'm like, some of this stuff I just don't believe. Not that I don't believe that he studied or something like that. It's just like saying every game is the same, just trying to get a W. Yeah, those are all like cliches. And so he's saying a few more of those, which, again, I've written this and I've said it on the podcast. I don't blame him for that necessarily, because he's in a position where every word that he says, he knows we're going to parse through it, which I'm doing right now. Exactly, right? So no shade there. But on the flip side of that, I do think that he's more aware of saying more of the right things out loud and more often. And I think when he says, he didn't have to tell us, like, his teammates and his coaches knew already, but him telling us, hey, my bye week, he could have just said, oh, I went, saw the family and, got focused for the game or whatever. But he told us in detail, and he was pushed on it, that, hey, I was bugging Shane the day after the New England game, like, hey, what you got on Denver? And I shared that via Twitter, and all the comments, all the fans are just, the listeners, I'm sure some of you out there are eating this up. You love it, right? Which is good. I mean, I would probably want to hear that myself if I was a fan of the team and fan of Anthony Richardson and wanting to see him mature. And I think that, again, saying and sort of matching what he's saying with his actions is a big part of that. And so I do think there's a maturity aspect there to him. And I think on top of that, when it comes to, getting ready to face this team, when it comes to Sean Payton and his preparation, like, you're going to be tested. Like, this is going to be a big game for you. And I do think I kind of agree with you when it comes to an advantage being on the side of the Denver Broncos, because one, they're in the better position overall as a team. They have the coach that's been through this a lot more. They have a quarterback who, again, is a rookie. And EJ Speed was quick to say, hey, still, I know he's started a lot of college games. It's still not the NFL, which fair. Sure. But he is used to kind of being in that role of commanding a team, and he's playing pretty good football as of late. So I think all those factors are going to factor into what should be a really, really fun matchup. But yeah, it was it's funny to hear Anthony now, because it's almost like he's a completely different person since the benching. And I'm like, if I I don't know, unzipped you or something like that, would you like walk out and be like, I'm free, I'm Anthony again, or what? Because I'm like, this buttoned up guy, I don't know if I believe everything that I'm seeing from this guy, but I think that that's part of it though. I mean, when you're a quarterback in the NFL, you're going to say and do things that are sometimes, as a reporter, and from my perspective, just are boring and cliche and sort of cookie cutter. But I would believe that's probably a little bit better than being totally honest, like he was, during the tap out and stuff like that. So I think Anthony is kind of figuring it out. But again, I'm not going to say that he's arrived. I know that a lot of the players have been raving about his clutch gene, and I know Jim Bob Cooter was saying he doesn't get rattled in big moments. And so far, that is true. But obviously, we have to see a much, much bigger sample size. And to sort of, put a button on this, at least this part of our conversation, he's going to face a defense that will certainly not make things easy for him and face a coach that will certainly try to exploit some of those weaknesses that AR still has. And obviously a lot of that has to do with, just completions and keeping drives alive and things like that. So we'll see on that front for sure. But one thing I do want to touch on real quick, though, is this Colts defense. I know you raved about Denver's defense, but, talking to Gus Bradley, talking to Shane Steichen, one of the things that has come up, and I brought it up and they've mentioned it as well, their biggest problem is the middle of the field. And they haven't said this because they pretty much can't as coaches and as coordinators, but their linebacker play. They're going to get tested again. And to me, that is the biggest weakness of this defense. And I'm not saying linebacker play in totality. It's just when they're forced to cover. Like when they put EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin in coverage, it usually is advantage to the opposing team. And I think we've seen that time and time again where they're attacking the middle of the field and they're able to sustain drives, keep drives alive, and keep moving down the field because they know if we get our guy on their guy in space, we're going to win every time. Well, not every time, but I would say the majority of the time. And we've sort of seen that. And it was funny, Jim, hearing Bo Nix talk about the Colts' defense. And I love Colts fans. And sometimes I'm like, you guys work my nerves. But it's funny because they're like, I shared what Bo Nix said about the defense. He gave Gus Bradley a ton of credit. He says they try to keep everything underneath. They try to keep the explosives down. Obviously, we know explosives have been an issue for this defense. And so all the comments from Colts fans are like, this guy's, is he watching any film? He's a liar. Like, what is he doing? If this is what he thinks of the Colts defense, the Colts have a chance because he's not seeing anything. And it's like, well, he's not going to rip the opposing defensive coordinator, even if he does see some weaknesses out there. So it was just funny to hear that perspective. But I'm curious from your perspective, though, seriously.
Yeah.
What can this defense do at this point in the season when you mentioned this before we kind of got back into this week? You're not able to necessarily revamp or retool as much as you probably would if you had like a bye week in week 6 or 7. So where can they go from here on defense, Jim? Can they go anywhere? Can they change anything? And what do you see as maybe some just potential solutions, if there are any, to trying to get this defense at least good enough to give you a legitimate chance to knock off Denver and keep your playoff hopes alive?
So the easy answer is health. I mean, they're not that banged up, but when you do get a bye week off, you do get, even the guys who are playing through something. A guy like DeForest Buckner, is playing through something.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
He came back. I mean, he came back. He came back from the injury, obviously, and has been good. Not saying he's not. He's leading the team in sacks, but like, I do think that giving him, a guy like him, an extra week off to kind of get his body right is going to be really, really big. The linebackers, I don't know that there is an easy answer to that question, honestly. The problem for me with Gus is, in my opinion, he does change things up occasionally, but he does tend to lean more into what Gus does. So I don't know that the bye week really helps him. It doesn't help in that he's going to do some self-scout, and he's not going to come out of it with, I think, 7 new schemes and a bunch of new stuff on the chalkboard to teach his guys, and we're going to do something different and really show Denver something they haven't seen before. It's not really who he is. He usually leans more into, let's do what we do well, which, I mean, Colts fans have gotten pretty used to given the defensive coordinators they've had over the years. Matt Eberflus was the same way with the Colts. It was very rarely would he throw a changeup. Most of the time, it was going to be the fastball. It was going to be the fastball you've seen before, and he's going to dare you to beat it. And I think Gus Bradley kind of comes from that same school. So it's going to be different. I will say that the challenge against Denver is that Bo Nix also is a guy who does a good job of limiting sacks. But the thing he has working for him that most rookie quarterbacks would love to have is that Denver's pass protection is one of the best, and it's one of the best in the NFL. They are fantastic in pass protection. Not the best run blocking unit; they're okay. But if you listen to the Athletic Football Show with our colleagues Robert Mays and Derek Klassen, they talk about this all the time. That Bo Nix has really benefited from the fact that they create an incredible pocket for him. He's rarely under duress, consistently throughout a game. The Colts have, again, they can kind of send waves. They have talented pass rushers. Nobody like a superstar outside of, Buckner when he's at his best. But it's going to be really hard for them to generate consistent pressure against Bo Nix, and that's going to be a big problem for them because that is one of the strengths. That's supposed to be the strength of this Colts defense, right? We knew it wasn't going to be the linebacking core necessarily. We knew it wasn't going to be the secondary that was young. They were going to have to live on the fact that they were getting consistent pressure, wreaking havoc and making life miserable for quarterbacks. Denver makes that really hard for you. Sean Payton makes that really hard for you. And this offensive line makes that really hard for you. So again, it's a tough matchup on both sides of the ball. There's a reason Denver's 8-5. There's a reason this team is in the playoff hunt right now, and it looks like it has, on the fast track to a playoff spot. So this is not a team you want to face in a lot of ways because they just make your life very, very difficult on both sides of the ball. You're hard to get to their quarterback, and they get after your quarterback. So that's a good combination for any team.
Absolutely. And I'll trying to think about how we can wrap this thing up, but I do want to mention real quick some of the injuries and injury updates. Ryan Kelly was back at practice after, coming off IR. They opened a 21-day return to play window for him and rookie linebacker Jalen Carlisle. So you mentioned health, Jim.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much Jalen Carlisle you want to rely on, but I do know that the rookie before the fibula injury that he was out with and kind of forcing to miss a ton of time this season, he was more of like their rangy linebacker. And I do think that if he can turn a corner pretty quickly, he's somebody that you can at least have at your disposal to say, hey, do we trust this guy? Because I do think that he can cover, fairly well. But we'll see. Obviously, he's coming off a significant leg injury and hasn't played in multiple weeks. Ryan Kelly, who I mentioned again, he's coming off knee surgery. He is the team starting center. That was something that Shane Steichen confirmed. I thought there would have been a little bit of a debate between him and Tanner Bortolini, who had played pretty well in his absence, but it sounds like Ryan Kelly would be the guy if he can go. Josh Downs was back at practice yesterday as well. That's a good sign after he missed the game before the bye week with a shoulder injury. Obviously, the bye was good for his health. Michael Pittman Jr. practiced yesterday with his back. I asked him about his back. I was like, what did the bye week do for you? He was like, oh, yeah, I'm healed. In a very sarcastic Michael Pittman Jr. tone. He is not healed. But
I saw that video. It was very good.
I was like, and then he got Anthony Calhoun, AC, from Wish TV. You telling him, the power of prayer works. And he's like, yep, amen. And I'm like, yeah, this guy's not healthy. Or at least not 100% healthy, but he's going to obviously, at this point, with stuff still to play for, which was my biggest thing with Pittman playing through his back injury. If they had lost a few of these games, against New England, against the Jets, is he still playing right now? I'm not sure. But there's reason for everyone involved to get out there and play if you can because they have a playoff berth on the line. So, and he was one of the ones who kind of emphasized that, hey, I'm glad Anthony's going to be getting this experience. And I do think that this is going to be good for him. I do trust him to play well in this game. But he was just saying from a big picture perspective, hey, man, I thought the playoffs were going to be easy to get to after my rookie year, and we haven't been back there since. Yeah. And so that was kind of a sobering thought from him. And the last thing I'll kind of wrap up with is, one, if you haven't read the story that me and Jim thought about and looked over and spent 45 minutes developing a headline on that we still didn't even use. Someone else picked it. Check out the story that I wrote about Sam Ehlinger and Anthony Richardson. I think that you will enjoy sort of the process and the behind the scenes of what went into Anthony's sort of redemption arc this season and the role that Sam Ehlinger played in it. Obviously, you can't give Sam all the credit, but I do think he deserves a big portion of that credit, and Anthony would say the same. Their friendship, their brotherhood. They do act like brothers. It is pretty funny, and it was cool to kind of, beyond what Sam means to Anthony, it was cool to kind of see what Sam means to the team overall and the perspective from others. And I was asking Sam all kind of philosophical football questions, and he was giving me all this that I didn't even use for the story. One of the ones I asked him was like, man, how do you find your identity in football, or how do you find your identity outside of football when you spend your whole life trying to, be this person or be this QB1? And he was saying it's intoxicating at times. You can, try to make your entire identity, being this player. And it's hard. He was like, because it demands so much of you as a pro football player, and even more as a quarterback. And he made it very clear he still wants to play. And he was saying, I don't, and I told him, so you don't have to help Anthony. So why do it? He's like, just because from his perspective, from a faith-based perspective, he was like, hey, I believe in God. And I believe like if you truly serve him, you should serve others. And so I'm going to serve Anthony and love Anthony. I thought that was really cool to even just write about, in a very masculine sport, how to, dudes just love each other. And so that was fun. And that was a cool story. So I encourage you all to check that one out. I know Jim enjoyed editing that one and again just brainstorming that one. So that was
man. That was one of my favorites you've written this year, man. It was cool. Fun. Like I said, I love that behind the scenes stuff. I love that relationship stuff. I love that. I don't know. I love that Anthony was willing to open up about that because, like you said, he's buttoned up a little bit more since the benching. And I think when you asked him about Sam, you could tell he kind of lit up a little bit more. He was willing to open up a little bit more and share. I think he at one point he calls Sam my person. And not that way. He says he's like the person I can talk. I just love the idea that like he knows that there's a part of his life that he cannot share with other people. Because one, they don't get it. They don't understand what it's like to be a quarterback in the NFL. But two, because you have to put on this facade, I think, or this mask of like invincibility sometimes. Yeah. And you have to pretend nothing gets to you and you're not bothered by anything. And I think he told you, which is awesome, he told you that he can let his guard down with Sam. And there aren't many people he can do that with. Because especially because he let his guard down, right? I'm tired. I tapped out. Like, and all of a sudden people killed him for it. And and again, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have said anything or they shouldn't have killed him for it. That's not my point. My point is, I think he understood that there's only certain times where you can really open up and be honest, and you have to pick the right people to do that with. And the media after a game is not necessarily the best place for that. But with Sam, he can be open and honest and truthful about how he's feeling, not just about as a quarterback, but as a person. So I loved it. I loved that we got like an insight into that dynamic of that relationship. And again, I am curious, and we talked about this, I don't think it actually, you mentioned it at the end of the story, I think, how it affects Sam's career. Like, I know he wants to go play somewhere, but maybe his most effective role in the NFL is going to be a tutor, a mentor in the NFL to young quarterback. Maybe that's not Anthony. Maybe it's another quarterback, but it could be. And maybe the Colts value what he brings to Anthony so much
I was
they want to pay him to be the backup next year. I don't know. I'm not sure what the like the knock-on effect is going to be, but Sam has found a way to be valuable in the NFL, which is awesome and very cool to learn because he seems, again, I got to know Sam. I was still covering the Colts when they drafted him. I got to know Sam a little bit. Seems like a great person, and so it was very cool to see how he's kind of carved his own niche in the NFL.
Absolutely.
Great work on the story is what I was saying.
yeah, I take all credit, it was all me. No, it was two guys being willing to talk about some real things. And it started with, obviously, after Anthony's return in the Jets game, he has a great game, talked to him in the locker room, and he's like, trying to cry right now. And he turns to Sam and says, I thank this guy for believing in me, and kind of gives him a hug. And I'm like, wait, this is a little bit more real than I expected, or a little bit more poignant than I expected. So that was a fun moment to kind of revisit it. And shout out to the readers. A lot of you were on me like, hey, I remember distinctly one of the comments on that game story was like, hey, I love this game story. It was cool to kind of get a different perspective, whatever, which is always good to hear. But then they were like, hey, we want more. Like, that's the real story here. Like, that's the one we were kind of chasing. So we finally put it out there, and I'm excited about that. So that was fun.
Yeah.
And I'll conclude with this. Shout out to Kenny Moore for being the Colts' Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. Yeah. He is a 2-time Walter Payton Man of the Year for the franchise. And that is, to my knowledge, and from Lara Overton, who is the Colts' sideline reporter and just extraordinary human being overall. She was saying that's Kenny is the first 2-time winner of this award for the Colts franchise. And Kenny's one of those players I use in Sam's story, someone I can go to and talk to about good things, bad things, whatever's going on with the team. He speaks his mind, but he also backs it up off the field with how he carries himself, because I joke with him, he keeps me busy on my off days. There's always a message from one of his publicists or whoever, kind of runs things for him to come to an event because Kenny's doing something. And I'm like, do you ever take time off? And so he deserves that award. And obviously there's plenty of deserving guys. I mean, I went to a thing the other day with Laquan McDonald, who's been here not even a full year with the Colts. He's a practice squad wide receiver for the most part.
Treadwell.
I'm sorry. Laquan Treadwell. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I say you give him a shout out. I want to make sure you got the name.
Yeah. You know what? I actually, like, in all seriousness, I do want to not make light of that. I know I said Laquan McDonald. That is an entirely different subject. I'll leave it at that. There is some, that's, to put it out there, not to, get too off track, but that involves police violence and things like that. That's why that name came to mind. I'm sorry about that. So
Yeah, no, I get it. I just wanted to make sure we didn't.
Yeah, Laquan Treadwell, who I got to meet him and not meet him, but meet his son, and he was there with them, kind of helping out. And so again, a lot of these guys do great things, but Kenny obviously does it to an extent where it's earned him another great honor. So he's someone again that I really respect within this organization, within this team, and he is another one who's also saying like, hey, you know, I get it, I get the big picture stuff. A lot of these guys are like that, but he's also another guy who's hungry for that playoff opportunity, and I think that's what we're all kind of focusing on when it comes to this game in Denver. And so I'm excited to see it. I do want to know, in all seriousness, how the altitude and stuff like that would affect them. I think Anthony, obviously, running and doing some of the things that he does, you know, do you take a timeout early? Do you slow it down more? Do you put him under center? Like, I'm curious to see how all those things kind of factor in and how he, you know, responds. And so very excited for that game and do want to, like I said, kind of end it with that thought. And also, while I'm still at it, I guess some other things to kind of keep an eye on is that right tackle spot. It's probably going to be Matt Gonzalez again at right tackle as Braden Smith deals with a personal matter. I have no idea what it is. I'm not even trying to find out what it is. I respect his privacy. But Shane Steichen did say he doesn't know if he's going to play again this season. So it is a bit serious. So just keep him in your thoughts and prayers as we move forward with the game that obviously, you know, means a lot to the team, but obviously nothing more into whatever's going on with Braden Smith and his family. And for those who keep telling me, oh, he got paid, he doesn't care anymore. I saw Braden Smith play with like a knee that didn't work last year.
Yeah,
give everything
to this. That's
team.
not Braden, man.
Yeah, like he's not missing time. He's not missing games because he's hurt or that his body can't hold up. Like he literally went last year and played until he couldn't play anymore. So keep that in perspective before you know, go throwing out stuff like, oh, he's soft or, you know, he got paid and he changed. Like, oh, man, he's there's some perspective there. And I'm sure you can appreciate that, Jim, for sure. So I'm excited about that. And we'll see how it goes out there in Denver. I know I'm excited to get back out there. I enjoy Denver whenever I'm out there. I don't have to deal with the altitude, Jim. You know, I don't know if you've been out there, if you've ever been out of breath in Denver.
Oh, I have. I went for like a long run one time, and I was training for a 5K at the time, and I was like, I'll just go out and keep going. And I think I started like halfway through. I was like, oh my God, this is like 10 times different than I always heard about athletes dealing with it, and I always kind of like rolled my eyes. I'm like, whatever, you're a professional athlete, like play. And like I again, having just doing jogging in the mountains, I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. So yeah, I get it. I mean, I don't get it because I don't play professional sports, but like that was my little taste of it, and I'm like, I don't want to do that ever again.
Well, look, I can tell you right now, you will not see me. If any of you are traveling to the game in Denver, you will not see James Boyd on the side of the road because I passed out because I'm trying to do the Jim Ayello 5K training plan. So yeah, we'll check in with you all very soon here. But for now, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll check in again next week after what could be a do or die game for the Colts this season.
Summer's heating up, and so is the action with Chumba Casino and 23XI Racing. Whether you're trackside with Bubba, Riley, and Tyler, or cooling off at home, the fun never stops at Chumba Casino, the online social casino packed with free-to-play games like slots, blackjack, and more. Jump into summer at ChumbaCasino.com and score your free welcome bonus, 2 million free gold coins and 2 free sweeps coins. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.